Hi guys, welcome back to another 3 Amigos video. And in this video, I want to share with you 5 things I wish I knew before buying my first Leica M camera. So to give you guys a bit of a background story, I've been shooting Leica cameras, M bodies in particular, for more than 4 years now. I bought my first Leica M6, which was a film body, and over the years I've changed to a Leica MP black paint, which is my primary film camera in the meantime, and my primary digital body is the Leica M10P. I've also been fortunate enough to try many different cameras on the channel, including different film bodies such as the M3, the M6, M7, as well as different digital bodies including the M240, M10, M11, M11 monochrome, etc., etc. Now, I'm by no means a professional photographer, but I hope that my experience over the past couple years will help you answer this question and give you some introduction into what it actually feels like to own a Leica M camera. The first and most important thing that I learned about buying and using different M bodies and lenses is that it doesn't make you a better photographer. In fact, in the beginning, your photos are going to be shit. Now, hear me out first. Myself included, I bought a Leica M because I wanted to go for the rangefinder experience. Most of us who are coming from digital photography backgrounds, including myself, having shot a Nikon Z and a Nikon D800 for more than 10 years, we're quite used to having no issues in terms of taking photos. By that, I mean we're used to pointing the camera and snapping away hundreds and thousands of photos without having much problems with exposure and composition. So when you buy a Leica M camera, you're actually buying a camera that is actually more inconvenient, but what you're getting in return is a more authentic and raw photography experience. The analogy I like to draw is like it's driving an electric car and an old vintage car. Both of them serve the same purpose of taking you from point A to point B, but the experience of doing it is very different. Shooting with a DSLR or mirrorless camera is like driving an electric car or any modern day petrol car. You go in, you turn on the engine, you get there, it's easy and it's even automated. Shooting with a Leica M camera is like driving a vintage car. You're buying it because, yes, it's more inconvenient to manual focus. There's a steep learning curve with the rangefinder, but you're buying it because you want to take photography back to its roots. So buying a Leica M camera does not make you a better photographer. In fact, I would say it's even harder to take good photos with Leica cameras because of its inconvenience. But I think Leica M photographers out there would understand that when you take a good photo, I might take the same photo with my Nikon DSLR and with the Leica M body, but the enjoyment, the reward, the memory, and the tactile feeling I get from the Leica M is much more rewarding. So I hope it addresses the issue that getting a Leica M camera doesn't make you a better photographer, but I think the experience and the uniqueness is definitely worth a try. Number 2 is the rangefinder is a learning experience, so be prepared to waste time and money. So I first started off with a Leica M6, so I was shooting film photography in the beginning, and it probably took me about 20 rolls of film to become very comfortable with the rangefinder and how to compose photos with it. Because when we use the SLR, we're used to just composing of what we see in the frame. But with a rangefinder, you need to get used to the frame lines, and it can actually make composing photos a bit difficult at first. Another thing I realized with the rangefinder was that I often had things coming into the lens or into the photo without even knowing it. So for example, sometimes I would shoot and I would notice parts of my finger or would come into the frame, or sometimes my cap would come into the frame because this lens is much shorter than DSLRs, and sometimes you're not even aware that it comes into the frame. So that was definitely a learning experience for me, and that's why, you know, there are some memes out there about the Leica M6 or the Leica sort of M hat, which is basically a beanie because that doesn't come into your frame. Now, so be prepared to take the time to learn, whether or not it's digital or film. I think if you're contemplating between the two, it's easier to learn with a digital body at first because you get instant feedback, whereas with film, it takes time to sort of learn how to compose photos because there will be some delay in terms of when you got the photos and when you actually would see them. Now, the third thing I learned about shooting with a Leica M camera is that your appreciation for a good photo kind of changes. Now, if you go to the LFI, which is Leica's sort of official gallery where they post images, you'll realize that the photographs and the artistic perspectives and the sort of judgment of a good photo is a bit different. To list an example, if I were to take the same photo with a Leica M body versus a mirrorless or DSLR, somehow I would have a lot more appreciation for the photo that was taken with the Leica M body. Now, I know it's a bit cliche to say that I would get more enjoyment even the photo's the same, but I think as a photographer, we enjoy the experience as much as taking the photo itself. So having to manually expose and compose the photos and sort of lose yourself in that rangefinder experience changes your appreciation for photography. So before I bought a Leica M body, I never really understood these sort of artsy photos or these sort of street photos, but over time, when you've sort of had that experience yourself, I can begin to understand and appreciate these photos. So that's something that comes with time. The fourth thing that I learned about Leica M photography is to really invest into the glass before the body. Now, you've probably heard this in many other channels, and that's probably a lot of advice that you would hear from other brands as well. But I think it applies particularly for Leica M glass, because I've used various Leica M digital bodies, everything from the M9 to the M240 to the M10, M11, and although there are upgrades in terms of the sensor and the firmware and various, you know, convenience sort of things, the Leica M photography experience boils down to the rangefinder experience. And I find that I enjoy photos that I've taken from the M246 as much as photos I've enjoyed taking from the M11 monochrome. And these are cameras that are 8 years apart and sensors that are 8 years newer. But I find that even the older sensors can create amazing photographs, and I personally would say that investing your money into the Leica lenses in the long run gives you a much better experience. In fact, if I were to buy a digital body nowadays, my favorite body would probably be the M240 in terms of balancing the price and the sensor and the experience. So don't chase after the latest Leica body, because I think all the digital bodies out there would give you a very, very good starting point. In fact, I believe Leica lenses actually tend to retain its value over time more than digital bodies, so you can have a bit more flexibility in terms of trying out different lenses. A lot of people ask, should I look into vintage lenses or should I look into modern lenses? Now, I think the fact that the Leica M mount has been around for over 60 years is a testament to how amazing the Leica M construction is. And it means that you get to use lenses from the 50s and 60s, and there's a lot of character in these lenses which you might not be able to get from other camera brands. Now bear in mind that when we talk about character in terms of vintage glass, it's actually a lot of imperfections in terms of how the lenses were made, and also a lot of what we would regard in modern days as poor quality lenses. So chromatic aberration, softness. I think it's these things and imperfections that make vintage Leica glass so attractive, because we're creating images that we're not really used to. And I think that's what has the wow factor behind it, is that we're paying for imperfections, we're paying for history, and we're paying for a photo that looks different to what's being, a clinically sharp photo. Now, the modern Leica glasses are great as well. They're small, well built, but I think there's a lot of alternative camera brands out there that actually give pretty good alternatives, such as the Voigtlander or Seven Artisans are creating amazing glass at a fraction of the cost. And so if you're looking for that modern clinical character, don't be afraid of buying third-party lenses, because I think for the value that they're offering, it's pretty amazing. Now, the last thing I have to share is enjoy the process. What makes the M system so attractive is that it's been there for decades. When I go on the street shooting with a Leica film body, I sort of imagine myself traveling back in time for 40, 50 years and doing what these photo street journalists were doing at the time. And you really can't rush this process. From sharing as a bit of a personal experience, I didn't do as much research as I should have, and I bought the first Leica lens that I bought was a vintage lens. And so when the photos came out, I was like, why are the photos so soft? Why are they, so different from the photos that I'm used to? And I ended up buying more lenses, more camera bodies, only to find out that it took time for me to appreciate that side of photography. And so don't rush the process, take your time to save up. It's better that you have one lens which you become really comfortable at shooting than having a multitude of lenses and not being able to really appreciate the character of the lens, how to really take the time to optimize your experience. After all, when it comes to shooting Leicas, there's really no instant gratification. And I can sort of understand why, shooting and collecting Leica cameras is really a lifelong experience. Anyway, I hope this video has shared some insight into my Leica journey and things that I wish I knew earlier. So I hope you guys like this video. Now don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Until next time.